Hello, welcome to another coffee break with Kardec. Grab your cup of coffee, tea, hot chocolate, or cold drink, and let's talk about some healing cases from the book Genesis according to Spiritism. And in fact, are cases brought from the Gospels, but that Kardec presents them to us and gives some explanation according to the Spiritist view we have of the phenomena that take place during some of these healing cases. I mean, all the cases within the Bible, and most especially within the Gospels, they can be explained now looking at the theory of fluids and how they work, and of course the concept of perispirit, this spiritual body that envelops the essence, the spirit, and through which the interaction occurs between the material and the spiritual world. So let's see, for instance, the famous case of the woman who spent 12 years bleeding, and she went to see many doctors of Jesus' time, and no one could understand what was going on, and even less propose a process of cure for her. So she had lost all hopes, and then when she heard about Jesus, and she then decided to go and see him, and she had this strong faith that she would be cured if she could only touch his garments. And that was exactly what happened. Jesus was with this group of people walking on the street, and surrounded by this multitude, she got close to him from behind, and then she touched his garment. And a very interesting process took place. Jesus wasn't aware of what was going on. He had all those people around him, and this woman, she believed, truly believed, that by touching his garment, there would be enough to heal her, to cure her. And when she did that, when she touched him, she felt something changing within her body. She realized that the bleeding had stopped. But at the same time, Jesus felt that, as he said, a virtue went from him, meaning that some fluids were taken from him. First, it's important to understand, we've mentioned this before, Jesus, by his degree of elevation, of pureness, he naturally had these fluids which were healthy, pure fluids around him. There was the aura, if we can use that word. There was the atmosphere around him. He was a provider of very healthy, elevated fluids because he was an elevated spirit and naturally manipulated, created this identity, spiritual identity, fluidic identity around him. So on the one hand, we have a source of pure fluids. On the other hand, we have someone who had this strong willpower, who believed, we call it faith, not in the mystical aspect of faith, but this is a natural process, a strong faith, belief that she could take something from him and cure her. And it's interesting to look from both sides, because Jesus wasn't aware of what had happened. And then he asked those around him, the disciples, and said, someone touched my garment. And then someone said to him, well, you're surrounded by people. You are people bumping on you all the time. So, yes, But he said, no, someone touched my garment in a special way, because there was this fluidic movement. And then the woman, he was afraid. He realized that Jesus knew what had happened. And then she said, to him that she was the one who did that. And then he looked at her and said, your faith has cured you. And what kind of faith is that? She just said, I believe, and full stop. No. Her spirit had this strong will. We know that willpower is very important when giving qualities to fluids, and also in all process, willpower is very important. It's not that just the mere fact that we understand this process. It doesn't necessarily mean that the process will take place, and most especially will take place in its full power. So she had this faith, she had this strong will. It wasn't the work of a healer, because Jesus didn't do that on purpose. He wasn't aware that there was this woman in need, and he didn't just went there and directed his thoughts and cure her by spiritual healing, for instance. And it wasn't magnetic healing. It wasn't a magnetization that takes place on the laying on of hands, because this process has got a focus. The magnetizer directs his fluids towards the person in need. In that case, it was a natural process because there was a source. There was abundance of healing fluid, and there was someone in need. But one could say, well, perhaps most people around Jesus, they were people in need. Why? And some people touched his garment. Why it happened only with this woman? Because she was in a receptive condition. She was in a position as a pump that sucks, the fluids that are necessary to her. And sometimes, and the lesson here, the important lesson here is that sometimes, even when we go to places to receive healing, if we don't place ourselves mentally in a receptive position, we either block the healing, and sometimes we even repel the healing with fluids that are antagonists to the fluids that we are receiving. That's why it's so important, the preparation. That's why normally we have something in the Spiritist Center before the actual healing, before it takes place, because it's important to put people in a condition to receive. Again, there is a natural phenomenon we see in nature that is called resonance. When two objects are vibrating at the same frequency, one that is vibrating and has a lot of energy, if it's tuned in resonance with the other one, this is the ideal condition where the transfer of energy is the greatest. If it's out of resonance, perhaps part of the energy will transfer, but not in an efficient way. And if it's completely out of resonance, nothing will happen. So it's like putting ourselves in the condition to receive and having a source that is providing us with it. Sometimes we go to special places, normally in nature, where we say, oh, here, there is something that's, sort of gives me, a perception of a well-being or something. We know there are fluids everywhere. We know there are good fluids and negative fluids, depending on the place, depending on the source of these fluids. And we know that several people could go to the same place, and some people will absorb the energies, be them negative or positive, more than others. So this is a natural, active process. It's not a passive process, because if we place ourselves in a state of mind and we block these fluids, we may go to a special session for healing and come out of that without having received fluid, if we don't change the state of our mind. That's why it's so important for us to read something nice, to meditate, to do a prayer, because with that we elevate our level of vibration. We open the channels, as some people say, and then we are ready to absorb those fluids. And so in some cases, two people with the same condition, with the same physical problem, they go to the same healer. One of them may get cured and the other one may not. we normally say, oh, this is due to the merit of that person and not the other one. It's not just the case that there are natural processes that take place. And these natural processes, they obey laws. And one thing that we see in cases of physical cure is that we have to obey, even promoting a physical cure of an illness. We have to respect, the process respects natural laws. And we are going to see this in another situation, which is the case of the blind man of Bethsaida. So there was this blind man there, and Jesus, what he did, he cured this man. He used saliva, put some saliva on the man's eye, and then did the laying on of his hands upon his eyes, and then he asked the man if he was seeing, and he said, "Oh, I see people moving around as if they were trees." And Jesus went again, used his hands again, put them on his eyes, and then again he asked the man, and he said he was seeing normally. Why was this a two-step process? Because we have to remember, for instance, for us to see, we need our eyes, we need the optical nerves to conduct the impulses to the brain, and we need the special area of the brain where we can see, where the phenomenon takes place. If we have a problem in our eyes, we won't see. But if we have a problem in our optical nerves, also we won't see. And if we have a problem in the area of our brain responsible for seeing, of course we won't see as well. So we see that the process of healing is not just a magic wand. I want you to be healed, full stop. No. It has to promote the change on a physical level. And to promote the change on a physical level, the cause may not be physical, but the effect is physical. And for the effect to be physical, it has to respect natural physical laws. We can say that fluids which are not tangible act upon the physical body. Yes, but the physical body obeys physical laws. And when these fluids act upon the physical body, they promote a process, they create a process that has to respect. And in my view, this is why Jesus performed in two steps this process of healing. Just to show that, there's nothing magical in this. It's just a source which is not physical, promoting a change in a physical condition. And it's also interesting to see other cases. We had the cases of the paralytic of Capernaum. And Jesus said to him when curing him, he basically, in all cases, we could say, he said, your sins are forgiven. And what Jesus wanted to show, because Jesus didn't perform the cure just to say that he was the Christ, he was the Son of God, he was the governor of this planet, he was something very high in the spiritual hierarchy. No, Jesus had a lesson in each process that he took place, especially in the healing cases. And in this case, he said, your sins are forgiven, meaning that the processes we have to endure in the physical body, in this particular case, illnesses, they are related to reincarnation and the baggage that we bring from our previous incarnations, that we have to make amendments in these lives. And sometimes our physical condition, not always, can sometimes the physical conditions that we have in our present incarnation, they might be a way of working something different. And sometimes that spirit may be an enlightened spirit with some degree of enlightenment. It is under those conditions for the special work that needs to be done. But we're talking here about people who come to make amendments, to, I don't like the word paying debts. I don't see it as a debt. It's just a lesson that we haven't learned. We have to put things back in the right place, to clean the mess that we made, and then try to learn it again in a different way now. And then Jesus said, your sins are forgiven. And what he meant by that is you got to the point where your problem, your physical problem, is no longer necessary. But look, if it wasn't necessary anymore because the person had overcome that, why wasn't the person naturally cured? Because it has to obey natural laws. And then Jesus had to intervene in that case to accelerate the process of bringing the body back to the healthy condition, so that that problem, in this case, the paralysis, would go away. And just to finish, the last case that we have here is the case of the 10 lepers. And these 10 lepers, they approached Jesus, but they stopped at a certain distance because lepers couldn't get close to people at those on those days. And so they stopped there, and then Jesus said to them, go back and go tell the priests what has happened. And as they started going back, they were healed, they were cured, they were 10. And out of these 10, one was a Samaritan. And Samaritan, there were some, for the Jews, they weren't nice people because they had their own temple. They understood the laws in a different way. So they weren't very much accepted by the Jews. They were seen as sort of a second-class citizens. But the only one who turned back, because they were going there to show the priests what had happened, but the only one who went back to Jesus to thank him and to show that he was very grateful for the cure, was the Samaritan. And the lesson Jesus taught us with that was that despite the fact that the 10 were from different religions or denominations as such, he cured all of them at the same time from the same problem and without asking anything. But the only one that showed gratitude was the Samaritan, seen as a second-class citizen, despised by Jews. And the lesson also was that perhaps all the 10 were cured, but very few were really cured, because the cure of the body doesn't mean the cure of the spirit. And the problems that we have are problems, when they are problem situations, because our spirit needs healing, needs cure. And the cure of the spirit is a work that we need to do. We may get some help from the outside, especially in terms of healing the body. But healing the spirit is a process that depends on us. Each individual is responsible for his or her own spiritual healing, in the sense that curing the spirit, curing the cause of the problems. Because perhaps the 9 that didn't acknowledge what they had received and went without this sentiment of gratitude, they may have recovered, got the problem again in the future, or perhaps a different one, new disease, because what was causing the disease hadn't changed, just the physical body. And then Jesus, with this lesson, he also showed us that he performed what he had to perform. And in many situations, he said, go and sin no more, meaning that whatever led you to this problem, it has to be sorted out. Otherwise, the problem will come back. That's what I had for today. I invite you all to read the book Genesis, chapter 15. There are so many miracles, in inverted commas, that are discussed by Kardec in the light of the teachings from the spirits. I hope to see you soon in another coffee break with Kardec. Thank you.